Welcome to everybody, and I'm so touched and excited to introduce you to our next speaker. And I've got the pleasure of being here with Brigit Viksnins, who is, she was the person who taught me a lot of what I know now. So I feel like I'm sitting here in this kind of lineage. I can feel kind of like goosebumps and kind of like I'm probably flushing a little bit with yeah, this sense of kind of privilege to be here with you today, Brigit.
So glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Hmm. Hmm. And I'd love to give you a little bit more of an introduction to our viewers. So I'm just going to go over here. Okay, so Brigit Viksnins created the flourishing professional training program called Alchemical Alignment, which is somatic work for trauma resolution and embodiment of spirit. And when I was reading this earlier, I was so impressed, Brigit, because you've got, it harmonizes the mind, the body, the spirit, using biodynamic, craniosacral, pre and perinatal, shamanic, and Aikido principles, along with somatic experiencing informed trauma resolution skills. And of course, like your next sentence makes so much sense. It's like, yeah, based on 30 years of private practice, you've done a lot to be able to have all of those modalities kind of in this alchemical alignment training. You've described how alchemical alignment is a freeze melting modality that guides and supports practitioners both in the cultivation of subtle existential level skills for meeting post inescapable conditions of danger in themselves and others, and in the expansion of their existing range of resilience, especially after the people around them have been the danger. And you've said that beyond trauma resolution, embodiment of spirit becomes possible. So yeah, and I just want to pick up your book, which I have here, The Map of the Seven Realms, Meeting Freeze at the Dawn of the Golden Age, which I highly recommend to anyone who is here viewing this conversation that we're having. So you are a master of many areas. And
Try to avoid saying the word master. How about a student of many areas and a synthesizer, and the idea that I can receive, and give away, hopefully naming where things came from as they come through and how I may have changed them on the way through me.
Yeah, thank you for that correction.
I'd love to share things and practice them over and over and over again. As I study, I recognize polarities, and as I might claim master, then I have the other end of some polarity of that show up. And so, as I find something more, maybe humble, hopefully humble, in the middle of, oh, I share a bunch of things, it's so much easier than saying master or expert or something like that for me.
I'm
Yeah.
touched by your humbleness.
Well, coming from a history of disappearing all ego or people having way too much ego, where's the middle ground? Range of regulation of healthy ego. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. So what else can I tell you? Alchemical alignment.
I'd love for our listeners to hear a little bit more about alchemical alignment, because I just gave a kind of one sentence introduction to it there.
Yeah.
And I know there's so much to it. But are you able to offer us a kind of transmission, I guess, of this work, and kind of like how those pieces, the Aikido, the somatic experiencing, like how all of those modalities have served you along the way to get to the point where you are now in this kind of highly sophisticated way that you have developed of working with people?
I could take 20 years to tell you. Maybe 2, which is what we take in the program. At a foundation, I could say that, excuse me, self, spirit, soul, and soma really are where we reside.
Mm,
And if you don't reside there, then where are you? And what drove you out?
mm,
What can bring you back? And so basically, interpersonally, mechanically, and environmentally, those are the 3 main places where trauma comes in. Interpersonally, mechanically, and environmentally. As hell comes in to ourself or into our home, an imprint can be left that influences us for all time. And the imprint can have danger in it, which generally has a fight or flight response, or the imprint
mm,
can have death within it, which would lead to a freeze response.
mm,
And when they get coupled together, you'll get double binds of fight or flight or freeze, or I'm a hot mess in the midst of all of that. Or if it lasts long enough, it gets to be a cold mess that leads to bleak landscapes. The few
mm,
sentences I just said basically have the 7 realms of the map that's described in the book in there. As I leave health with my what I just named as self and soma and soul and spirit, where we can flow and be rich and joyous and fun and develop our best potential in the range of regulation or range of resonance or range of resilience, these things begin to collapse and get impeded and get distorted in many ways as there are leftover imprints from danger and from death that are
mm,
hyper and hypo. So my history, as you were just asking about somatic experiencing, I learned how to speak there. I was mute before I went to that program. And I wrote down busily everything everybody was saying because I had no sentences of my own. I had no voice of my own. I slowly, over the years of trauma work, began to, through shaking and everything, began to develop a voice. And through Aikido, I began to develop a body. And it was interesting to have life and death weapons training be my favorite thing. To hone a security system into resonance, into harmonics of recognizing what's actual safety and actual danger through the midst of all of that, because of a childhood of continually being in danger, and even safe things were dangerous. And so, how do you ever make your way through something like that towards discernment, clarity, a functioning front of your brain? As we're deeper in danger, the spiritual systems get shut down, the logical systems, even the intuitive systems can shut down, and we can go straight to a brainstem level survival,
mm.
or even deeper existential grave difficulty. So the road out of all of that is what began to become clear to me. And so in the school program, I might say it's kind of the Hogwarts, it's been called, of trauma resolution education, where so often we're working with the unseen, sometimes through the interface of the seen, but the unseen of what holes are left over, what boundary invasions make it all the way to my core, what lack of orienting do I have so that I don't even see what's coming, things like that.
Mm.
How to get out of there. Yeah.
And just kind of feeling everything that you've just shared and the kind of like the depth of it, the nuance of it, the power of it. As someone who's done a lot of my own trauma healing journey, you know, your words really speak to me. And what I'm hearing is like such clear signposts, such clear kind of understanding of like who we are, how we operate, how these imprints come in and kind of overlay our perceptions of reality, our perceptions of self and other. And, you know, the ways in which this trauma can kind of come in and impact us, not just on a kind of surface level, but all the way right down into that core sense of self. And I guess that's the piece that kind of most spoke to me when you were speaking. And I'm curious if you can kind of elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah. So existential level trauma and the deepest core wounds that are in the pelvis, belly, heart, throat, brain, deepest core wounds in the central nervous system, deepest core wounds in your immune system, in your cellular level defense response. Those tend to be from preconception time. And so it's possible to even study preconception somatics, which is a wonderful field of what is my felt sense experience as we begin to open different aspects of the preconception fields, which would include ancestral, karmic, or other lifetimes, cosmic, and collective, community, family based, the different fields that are part of the kaleidoscopic toroidal field. Kaleidoscopic, which means changing and moving and living and breathing. Toroidal field, which is a sphere with a central channel, that's a call and response, that's inviting a soul into incarnation on the planet at a certain place and time. All of those fields, all of those are elements going into our very first embodiment, moving through a conception time. At conception time, various things can happen as well. These are parts of the timeline that we visit in our second year of the program. And so we have the opportunity to notice the flavor of different traumas that might happen at that time, how to meet them. Oh my goodness, it's possible to create conditions for meeting them, recognizing their effects in the core, and begin to metabolize. Lately, a popular word is alchemize. It's kind of like, and I with my magic wand, zing, will alchemize you, or we will together, or something. I'm not quite sure how people are using it. It's a fabulous word to inquire about. How do I reach any of these stages? How do I work with them? How do I transmute anything? What is the special mix of will, command, and knowing, and surrender, allowing, receiving, opening? It's such a mystery and a wonderful thing to practice. I kind of look at it as an athletic event whenever we're doing things like this. How do you prepare for such a thing? How do you ever study enough? How do you ever create conditions in your own system so that you're tuned to concert readiness? This could be something for any practitioner to try on. Oh my goodness, when am I ever tuned to be played like a music instrument within whatever I'm doing?
So we're going into like the most subtle realms here.
Right away.
Right away,
Let's go.
right in there. And I'm noticing, like, I have this curiosity. It's like, wow, if we can take people into those spaces and they can start healing these big ancestral pieces, these kind of collective pieces. Like when you're working with one person, what's the ripple out effect of that collectively?
So fun. I was just working with one young man yesterday, and he's starting to sense in himself how working with one area of the body, the neighborhoods nearby start to melt and change. And then working with one point on the timeline, the time before and after that begins to melt and change. So he's learning space, repair, and time repair. And then there are relational web repairs from
Mm.
him to current time relationships as he tunes himself and shifts to who he can be. He notices his current time relationships changing, but then we're also noticing, first of all, his attitudes toward people in the lineage beginning to shift, and then also his access to different layers of them, where before it was just a compressed sense of they're always going to be disappointing or actively injuring. My goodness, I never felt her soul level. It showed up today. That sense that the melting of the webs of reality from one node of one person doing their own work begins to melt what is all around them.
And just kind of see this picture in my mind's eye of this web, and there's just these reverberations of healing moving through it, this kind of healing light moving through it and kind of illuminating more points, bringing life back to more points within the web.
And before that, everything would need to be compacted, or it would be frozen in one of the depths of freeze or something like that, or even needing to go like down towards fourth depth of freeze being fake. Like I'm not really here because I've been hurt that badly that I can't be here. Or the extinct one of I've had to disappear completely. I won't be part of that web because I've been hurt that badly. And so that's when it's like scar tissue in the webs of the beauty that we were just looking at. And somebody might listen to this and say, yeah, all of that sounds impossible. I will never get there. That's not for me or my kind of people, or there's some way where I won't belong and I won't have access to that.
Mm.
That's part of what we look at as well, is when is it impossible? And how can we begin to create conditions even for the impossible ones? For the inclusion of the ones who have never been included before. And it'll be unfamiliar. So it may need to be very slow to get used to, wait a second, even I am being included, or even that depth of me is being included. Yeah.
You touched on momentarily there these kind of different depths of freeze. You talked about fake and extinction. And I remember when I was reading this in your book, something in me went, oh, this, because, I'd been aware of like, a kind of cascade of freeze, the different kind of stages, but you've taken it to two other levels that I wasn't previously familiar with. And I think I'm particularly fascinated by the fake level. And I'm curious, would you be open to speaking into that and just kind of shining some light on what that actually might, what it might like feel like in someone's system when they're experiencing that?
Well, so you go to work with the arm and an arm, and the arm shows itself as rubber or concrete or sand.
Mm.
I was in a wonderful class all about the heart, and people were awakening hearts around the room, and it was great. And somebody went to work with mine, and I just heard bang, bang, bang. And I thought, what am I hearing? It's my subtle hearing. It's not actually in this space. And bang, it was the tempering of the metal, like a hull of a ship, around my entire heart. And if any spots were soft, they were going to get hit in order to be stronger. And I recognized, oh, I had patterns of becoming invulnerable from early on. It was a gift.
Mm.
It may be intended as such, like, don't go out in the world and be vulnerable. We are going to help you not be that way. I had the prow of a ship in here. It took me a while to recognize, oh, that's the fourth depth of freeze. It's gone to middle. It had to be that way for the conditions around it. Perfect. conditions for me to become who I am and teach what I'm teaching. Um, in the back, there was exploded particle board that had been glued back together, and some hooks reaching my that were rusted metal reaching my heart. And so I dare not move because of the imminent danger. I said, oh, perfect conditions to have heart in the middle of all of this. And so, of course, the heart would need to disappear also to the extinct level because of the imminent danger. The ability to be held by a practitioner who knows how to not make it worse is the best thing, and not to create a new injury, how to stay through one wave of experience at a time, how to back off and give time when needed, things like that would bring us toward the third depth of freeze, where we'd have some ice, maybe some necrotic or dead tissue. As terrible as that sounds, it's not metal anymore. It's coming more toward human. And then moving up to there might actually be emotion or new thought here, because while I was down deeper, probably not much emotion, probably some cynicism, maybe stoicism. Yeah, metaphors of like, yeah, these things happen, too bad. Try again next lifetime. Gallows humor, things like that. And so coming up through the layers of fear, we get closer to vulnerability. Oh no, I'm going to be able to be injured again as I become human again. It's terrible. And so to have a practitioner who's trained and who's aware of the deep vulnerability on the way toward range of resilience is incredibly precious. Some people are like that naturally, who are practitioners. Hang on to them if you know anybody like that. And on the other hand, some of the practitioners who are like that have a sourcing of their power as a practitioner from their own young injuries, and they will be managing chronic conditions in order to be a practitioner, which is why we would also love to raise the level. I love your title, Together We Rise. Raising the level of practitioner education around the world so that people aren't using ancient default settings in their security system that they needed for relatives around them, but probably not keeping them away from great depletion and great chronic symptoms to work that way.
Yeah, I see that a lot. Seen that a lot with practitioners that I know, and I know that, you know, one of my patterns has been to be hypervigilant. I had to be hypervigilant to stay safe, to survive my early experiences. And so I'm the person in the group, regardless of whether I'm facilitating the group or not, who kind of like knows where everyone is, knows what's going on. You know, I'm out there, and that has a cost to being out there all the time and observant and just kind of feeling, rather than just kind of resting into my own internal sense of safety. Like needing something out there to be managed in order for me to be able to feel safe within my own system.
Yeah. And our security system will know immediately if anybody could hold a larger field. And then role clarity can whatever ensue is the word. Role clarity can be present for me to be a student if the teacher possibly is holding a larger field than I would hold to keep all of the students in the room safe. I'm relating in my own way to what you were saying. And the clarity, finally, when finally some practitioner is a teacher and they're strong enough for me to relax, for me to close my eyes, for me to track my own system and not be up and out and holding the whole room, or actively participating and actively using my energy in the room. Oh, wow. What if I could just be me? Be a student. Isn't that such a gift? I love doing that in a colleague of mine. constellation circles where I know she's got it. And every now and then I'll contribute, and it's from my appropriate role clarity that I'm not leading today. I'm part of the group today. It's so beautiful to be able to do that. And to recognize when you're a facilitator, when students are doing that. And to be able to have the words to gently say, I'll take care of that. That's part of my role. Thanks for letting me know whatever you're doing, or thanks for doing your usual role. I would love to request that I be able to hold this role. Next week, when I'm in your class, you hold the role. Yeah. Which is part of a non-hierarchical approach to the world, where we're all in a circle and everybody's taking turns having a teaching role, or whatever it is that their expertise or their desire will lead them into. How about that?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of brings me on to another question, which is, for people who are facilitators, practitioners, space holders, whatever word we're using to describe this group of people, what I think kind of gets missed often is the amount of work we have to continually be doing with ourselves in order to hold space for others, and how it kind of gets often marginalized.
Yeah.
In the I'm going out there, I'm doing the doing, I'm seeing my clients, I'm running my groups, I'm writing my book, whatever it is, right? That we're doing in the doing. And then this other part just kind of gets abandoned once again. And we're not staying on top of that.
Yeah.
And so from your experience, I mean, I can share from mine and see if it resonates for you. But what I found is like the more I the more I grow in my work, in my capacity to create and to be with people and to guide and facilitate, then I have to kind of match that proportionally with my therapy, with my body work, with my craniosacral sessions, my time in nature, whatever it is that I'm also doing. There has to be this balance. And I'm curious if that's what you found in your personal journey and what you see within the students that you work with.
So there's a concept called the inertial fulcrums from biodynamic craniosacral, from osteopathy, where you have flow going through your body. However, the fulcrum that's being held, which is valiantly doing its best to protect you from an ancient trauma and continuing to create situations for getting through that old experience. If you imagine that we've done a certain amount of personal work to get to a certain level, and then we start teaching, the inertial drag of the one that's kind of like lead. There's this golden one who might be teaching, but the leaden one saying, help, help,
Mm,
and starting to drag the golden one downward, and then difficulties start to happen because of that. The inertial fulcrum, or fulcra, plural, many of them, will be influencing the teaching, will be influencing the relationships, will be influencing everything. And then as that person, because we're all people, as that person goes to do their personal work, they become that much more real. And
mm,
when they show up for the groups, they feel real. And bodies read other bodies. And
mm,
so the ones who are available for real life, and I'm not talking about real meaning you lay out all of your insecurities, difficulties, latest failures, and all of that, because that's another model of teaching. But then suddenly, do we have parentified children in the room who are taking
mm,
care of you? I just saw that happen recently, where somebody from the leadership role is really going to a leaden place and asking for the gold of the room to lift them up,
yes.
which may happen occasionally as maybe an emergency, but it looked like this person was saying, let me be real. And I was just thinking, oh, my heart goes out to the entire group that you
Yeah.
are leading. So my point was, as you do your personal work and as you're real, maybe you're newly aligned, newly feeling flow, newly feeling the humility of I'm a human being, and my goodness, there are vast powers that might begin to flow through me because I am both. I am all. I have the somatic experience. I have the mental realm that's getting more and more organized and rich. I've got the soul and spirit flowing. I've got systems of other relationships that are flowing through me. I've got archetypal realm starting to embody and move through me with grace, maybe. And there's beyond that mystery of what we might call Father, Mother, God, or divine masculine and divine feminine that come through and participate when we touch people, participate when we speak, participate. The flow comes through. And every level of human age of me is part of this in the nested reality of who I am. And if I've recently received some kind of work that brought me to my leading edge of vulnerability, my leading edge of not knowing how to deal with a certain aspect of self, something like that that brings me back to humility, everyone in the room will feel that. And that's a transmission that's nonverbal as well as possibly verbal. However, it's something that others can feel. And it will be unfamiliar to those who are looking for someone up on a pedestal,
Mhm.
teaching from high above and moving toward being calcified up there from whence they can fall. And it's ugly. And the narcissistic and cult-like dynamics begin to happen because of that. Not everybody is ready for real integration and alignment with spirit.
Mhm.
Not everybody is ready for that. It's quite advanced and difficult. And blessings upon everybody who's at a developmental stage who needs to go be in a place with a shiny one leader. Good luck.
Mhm.
It's a developmental phase that many on the planet at this time need to go through in order to get beyond that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's like when we put ourselves into the position of working with others in a supportive role, whatever form that is, it's like for me, there's like a deep desire to open up to my greatest potential, the greatest possibility that's available to me at this time,
Mm.
and using different kind of ways of supporting myself to come more, perhaps what I might describe as into my, what you might call like original blueprint, what we might call wholeness, but to kind of keep coming back, keep feeding that place and keep kind of like doing what I need to do to be there so that even more of me is open. Even more of me is open to things that are beyond me.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of my feeling is that as practitioner, space holder, facilitator, person who's holding space for others, that really this journey of knowing self and knowing beyond self, it has to run parallel and it has to be a priority, because we see what happens when somebody isn't doing that work.
Yeah.
Like you said, the cults arise, the lack of accountability.
Toxic,
Sorry.
toxic secrets.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you imagine that everybody has a secret area deep down inside, and then a private, maybe semi-private, semi-public, and public.
Mm.
Does health flow through all of those layers? Wouldn't that be so refreshing? To meet more people with something like that. The breath of life is a moving tide that moves through humans. And the sense of inviting that through secret and private layers in every cell of a central channel, in every space deep inside, in every layer of every system, in every bit of fluid that's with grace flowing through the whole system. What does that look like in humanity as that type of invitation is made?
And like as I feel that movement, it's kind of like this kind of like a clear transmission through each of those places. It's like what I'm saying is like the willingness in oneself to step up and step in and lead, and to step back and to be in a circle, and be a nobody, and be in receptivity, and to be open. And I call that doing our work, but it's not a very beautiful collection of words to describe it. But essentially, it's like if we can only stay in this role, well, I get to lead all the time and I want to shine all the time, then something is like got to be really murky within that system that you just described.
Or fixated also. If we imagine that optimally we'd like tides to flow through opposites. What if I lead and I flow with the tide over to following? What if I assert and offer and I also receive? What if I manifest and I magnetize, magnetically drawing things, the out and in, inhalation, exhalation, the, as above, so below, as within, so without. As the tides are here, all of these things are possible. In the fixation, certainly we can get really strong with great tone and move, and do things and act. And what's the other end of the spectrum? Is there a way to soften? Is there cave time where we go to the healthy dark of the womb, the healthy dark of the kidneys, the healthy dark that the brain loves for deep sleep, the healthy dark that all cells need, in order to go to that end of the spectrum? And then the light is that much more beautiful in contrast, the healthy light. How do we tidally move between those? And with the fixation, we move toward false light, and we move toward false and out of balance, darkness.
So I have so much imagery as you're talking.
Right.
And kind of like what I'm with here is just like what you're describing to me feels like coming back into right relationship with our naturalness, coming back into right relationship with nature, and not seeing nature as a separate thing that we go and spend time in, but that we actually learn how to be like that again.
Yeah, re-indigenizing a self. I'm so grateful that biodynamic craniosacral was one of my foundation trainings about 30 years ago now, to have tides flow through me and into the inner earth, and then through me and into the heavens and cosmos, and through me and out to the horizons. Um, a sense that I am a part of all that is. When I started out, I was not a part of anything, and I did my best not to exist. And when I started existing, I was so chaotic. I remember walking into a grocery store during that training and just thinking, I can't handle all of this sensory input. I didn't even have a coherent thought. I was just in a chaotic, messy place. So grateful to have gone through the great difficulties at the beginning of the journey to make my way toward more and more and more of having a refined system that can now speak about these things. Yeah.
a highly refined
I
system.
will by now, yeah. I love trainings, and especially if they're experiential. I just did an 11-day um, family constellations intensive. So much fun to be able to play with other humans in these realms specifically, and
Mm.
then stretch each other. What about this? What about this? Yeah, it's
So, for those people who are listening, who are either facilitators, want to be facilitators, I can imagine some of them are thinking, oh, wow, this feels like a lot, right?
yeah.
That there's a lot of kind of places that I need to kind of potentially reclaim within my experience. And, what I don't want to do is overwhelm people by talking about potentiality. Um, but, what would you what would you recommend to someone who's maybe, let's say they've been facilitating for like, I don't know, 5, 10 years, and they are pretty good at what they're doing, but they maybe have kind of like stagnated on their journey. And as they're watching this, they're probably thinking to themselves, okay, there's some pieces here that I need to tend to. There may be an ancestral piece they need to tend to. It may be kind of reconnecting to their sense of naturalness. It may be doing some work around the protection that they've got around their heart, whatever it may be. um, I'm going to ask you a kind of very vague and ambiguous question here, so I hope you can answer that. But you know, where would you direct somebody? It's like,
Somebody was asking me when we were creating our website, they said, Brigit, where's the entry point into your program? And I
mm,
said, well, actually, we've got a book, we've got 5 adjunct classes, we've got the newsletter, we've got um, sorry, the 5 adjunct classes, like introduction to tides, introduction to fields, introduction to the map of 7 realms, introduction to fairly advanced brain to body connection through reflexes, and Feldenkrais movements for melting freeze. Those are amazing
mm,
standalone classes. We've got 6 events every month through the Maintain Alignment Mighty Network platform, or 10 plus events, actually now 12. Practitioner alignments every week to upgrade yourself as a practitioner. And I've got a library now of over 200 recordings that slowly will make their way into the store. And we've got the 2-year program, which is not for everyone. I need to tell everybody, please say no to our program until it's like an obvious yes. There's so many
mm,
other things you can do. One
mm,
of our monthly ones is an hour and a half of deep, slow exploration of 12 different subjects throughout the year. And I might also say, run away from alchemical alignment for a few years and go do other programs, because it's not for everybody. They might want to take your program first,
mm,
which will give them exactly what they need.
mm,
Take a look at your program.
mm.
You find where you resonate, and whatever we're into might be really not appropriate for somebody. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I know that when we had our conversation last week, actually, one of the things that I wrote down to talk about was that there was something there about, as we kind of develop and grow as practitioners, space holders, facilitators, then we need to remember like the journey that we've been on, and to understand that the people that we're working with haven't been on that journey. And they're not seeing reality through our lens, they're
Right.
seeing it through their lens.
Yeah.
And the need, the need for remembering
Yeah.
how it felt at these
Exactly.
kind of points along the path.
Yeah. Like being completely rigid and braced. For me, I was doing fabulous body work with my hands, but they weren't necessarily connected to my arms or heart. I had really good hands, but where they were connected to, I have no idea. And so slowly, like with the alignment sequence, which I also channeled and created an amalgam of Aikido warm-ups, a dear teacher, Chen Zhang, her Dance of the Rising Phoenix, Qigong. These two teachers were directed by God to, or promised to God, to teach in the United States their arts. A teacher named Erin Mattis teaching active isolated stretching, and my dear grandfather in Latvia, who'd been to Siberia and back with grave difficulties, had a morning routine. I created the alignment sequence, movement sequence for the, like, can you even imagine slowly moving along and sensing there's nothing here. I don't know what's here, but I'm going to go through the motions until one day it comes to life, and the ignition of the light within, the inception begins, where each part of the body can come alive and begin to participate in the one whole, the wholeness. I had a couple of videos of that, and my first one was pretty tight, and I was wearing sunglasses and kind of hidden, even though it was a lovely location. And a filmmaker told me I'd done it gorgeously. Like the ratios on the screen, I could see that the tight body in there. I was sorry about that. And they were appropriate, those videos, for the people who were reaching them at that time. And now there's the next iteration in the Latvian forest, which I'm offering for your listeners. And I also create tiny iterations of that through our practitioner alignments. And so there are tiny doable bits of coming back to life after not living, after it's just impossible to be in a body, to be in a life. So speaking of remembering, how can a practitioner come with such great respect and not teach straight from the range of regulation that they've achieved, but possibly also remember when it was collapsed and things were all hot or all cold or all stuck, incredibly stuck. Yeah.
Yeah. And to offer those particular people, you know, those nervous systems all the time, all the space, all the care that they need to be able to access a greater range of regulation, a greater range of resilience.
Yeah. Which is also impossible. How do I come with an attitude of you have all the time you need, even though we know that we're living in a sense that we might be finished in 5 minutes? How do I come with that level of respect, no matter what the actual Chronos time is telling us, the Kairos time of reaching metaphysically into all space and time for a moment's transmission, which I'm doing right now to include every single one listening to this, to be able to drop into that moment. That's where the gifts are. Yeah.
I'd love to kind of ask you one more question.
Great.
And really it's kind of I guess it's kind of a rounding up of where we've been, and you know, this summit's called Together We Rise, Building Resilient Futures. And yeah, I'm curious about this word resilience. And for me, that's where my hope resides. Together we can build the resilience to meet what's going to be happening in the years to come in the world that we live in. And, you know, from what you've shared about your work, you know, I'm going to kind of really dilute what you've shared, but essentially you're building people who are more whole, more resilient, more available, more here, more present. And I'm curious, like, you're doing this work, you've been doing this work for 30 years, and what's your message of hope for people who are like, I want to do this work, I want to help people, I want to create the change? What's your message of hope for them?
Well, first of all, it might be disappointing, but I'll say when I'm not resisting what is, when I'm acknowledging something is impossible, then I have a chance to work with it. And so if I would like to have a spiritual bypass, then I have side effects. If I would like to have an override, then I have side effects. If I would like to please everybody, I will have side effects. And so how do I slowly get real? Which is where destructive and wrathful goddesses might need to come in and say, this is real. And those things have been taboo and anathema forever. So how do we move through possible embodiment of destruction, embodiment of rage, and not actually kill people close to us, hopefully? How do we ethically and responsibly move through some big energies, possibly with small doable bits at a time? The only reason why I would engage with super difficult subjects like this is because I've seen it get easier with person after person after person after person, where their life begins to have gems and treasures, almost like, shh, don't tell anybody, but I'm having a nice day. Or don't tell anybody, but I have money in the bank. Don't tell anybody, but somebody said they love me and I felt it, or something like that, where the tender things begin to happen. Or my child, not just the lovely things, but my child had an accident. And then the second had an accident, and somebody else wanted to move in. That's a friend of theirs. And the fluidity of the household took one after another difficulty. And we showed there's resilience in that those type of examples begin to be apparent through the lives of the people who are studying this kind of work and going through these kind of processes that we're talking about. That's, for me, in the quiet way where the hope comes from, is that I've seen what can happen. And so often we'll say we're having a quiet celebration right now because a loud celebration startles the security system back into old states of, oh God, what are you doing now? So the quiet celebration allows for the new undersea creature, the new wild forest creatures, the new ones to continue to stay alive and present and working, as well as the nature spirits, as well as the guides and allies from the unseen realms, for them to continue for the embodiment of what's coming through me. Oh my God. For that to stay in the moment as opposed to be hidden or displaced, or an alternate aspect of self who doesn't really come to here and now. Like who am I really, and can that one participate in this lifetime? That's my sense of hope. How do I build from everything is stuck and all of my perceptual fields are matted together and don't let me see those things that those shiny people in social media are talking about? I can't get there. I'm matted down in my perceptual field. How do I slowly watch the dissolution of I too could be who I am, and I am one of them, which is kind of strange and unusual, but I think I find them cool. Something like that. Yeah.
Brigit, you've wowed me with the depths that we've gone to in this conversation, and the range and the subtlety and the nuance and the beauty that you bring. I'm just I'm going to be digesting this conversation for a while.
I'm so glad for your questions so that I could
Mm,
say them, you know,
mm,
people can hear this content.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And you briefly touched on, but I want to come back to it, that you have a gift for people, the alignment sequence, so that if people sign up to your newsletter, that they can access this gift. We're going to put all the links in the show notes.
Yeah.
But do you want to give us a kind of little headline about
Yeah.
why they might want to have that?
The alignment sequence is for any body, and you do small doable bits of it. There are 3 lengths of recordings. One of them is slow with narration. One of them is medium, silent, just music, silent in terms of no talking. And one of them is short with affirmation. And
Mm,
it's been surprising to me when people use the different lengths. And some people say, you know, I was in the hospital or I was on the edge of this greatest illness that I was just coming out of. And I brought myself back to life using that at first, just with attention and intention, and maybe even a fingertip moving because I was in pain or something like that. All the way to one person said to me, I was on my way to meet President Obama. I used the 8-minute version and it got me into the alignment that I wanted. And I thought, oh, that was an unintended side effect that it could be that powerful for you. I'm so grateful that it worked for you. So that is what I'm adding. And the deal is that any aspect of the body can be cut off and left out from our security system awareness of what is wholeness.
mm,
So when you're doing a movement sequence that includes every part, you end up slowly learning to include every part yourself deep on the inside. It may
mm,
take, for some people, years to allow some part to actually be part of me because it's holding some disassociated experience. And so as the inclusion gets real, we get to become more and more and more powerful. Um, and life can be fun there as opposed to a life of either being victim or perpetrator, which is what a lot of people find themselves in post traumatically. Being able to grow a range of regulation, resilience, resonance, reciprocity, relationship, all of the wonderful R's that live in there, and give and receive in life is through the embodiment, as well as travel to anywhere, anytime, psychically is available through embodiment. Yeah.
what a beautiful gift.
Yeah. So I'm
Thank
glad.
you.
Yeah. Limited time, just through December 2024,
Great.
because it's a super valuable gift and I didn't want to leave it open ended. Just wanted it to be concise.
Beautiful. I
Yeah.
love your boundaries.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
There it is.
Well, thank you ever so much, Brigit. It's been such a joy and a pleasure to receive you, to receive your teachings, to receive this transmission, to feel the impact of you on my system, on my being. I can feel things are shifting inside of me. There's a little transformation happening as we
Yeah.
speak.
Which is what's available to us now. It used to be theory passed on from one to another.
Mm,
And now we get to do embodiment passed on from one
mm.
to another and let that grow. So all of the greatest gifts I've ever received, I get to pass right along. It's so beautiful. Without the win-lose of being a battery, which is what many practitioners grew up as, a battery for the others. How does that change to a win-win, fifth dimensional and above
Mm.
experience? Yeah, cool. On that note, have a great day.
I will.